Great, thank you. How are you doing, Marion?
I'm well, thank you. How are you going?
Doing good, thank you. And thank you for sending me that intro. Once we get started, I'll read that.
No problem. It was kind of funny doing it in third person. It's like, how do I write this? I don't know. I
I
never had to
bet.
do that.
I bet. Yeah. Do you have a busy day ahead of you?
Yes, I will probably just be working today. I am a little bit behind on a deadline. Um, I've had a lot of authors be behind on their own deadlines, so it sort of pushed me back a little bit as
Definitely.
well. So yes, it's a beautiful sunny. It's a very cold day today. It's
Oh.
about 41 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold for Sydney. Um, so yeah, so it's a wintry morning, and I would love to be out doing some gardening or something like that. But that's all right. I'll be at my desk. That's okay.
Aw. Well, hopefully you can enjoy it a little.
I can. I mean, I can still see. I my office faces out to the street, and so I can actually see the beautiful sunshine, and which is nice. So it's all good.
Good. So I think we shall begin, Morgan.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you all who can make it. I know there'll be a lot of people watching this recording. So thank you to Marion Archer who's joining us today, and she was very kind and provided me an intro. So I'm going to be reading that. So in 2011, Marion was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, and life as she known it changed significantly. A friend lent her a Kindle as she struggled to concentrate on anything for long periods of time, and a romance reader was born. After connecting with some authors on Facebook, she joined an online club where they frequently Zoomed with the authors of books they were reading. Through that group, she was given arcs to review from one of the group members' blogs, and that gained the notice of a few authors who believed she had an eye for seeing a little deeper into their stories. At the advice of one of those authors, Rain Miller, she began making manuscripts in 2013. Initially, she focused purely on content development, and the role just kept growing. Through the assistance of another member of that book club and lots of online grammar sleuthing, she began the long and steep learning curve in the US grammar and punctuation, thus adding line and copy editing to her capabilities. Throughout the last 12 years, she has probably worked on over 500 books, some of which have been turned into movies. She's attended several author events as either assistants or contributed to editing panels in the UK and the US. She feels extremely honored to work for several New York Times and USA bestselling authors in either content development for traditionally published works and or developmental editing for indie and hybrid authors. As per Marion's website, it's vital to her that authors feel supported and cushioned in the often tumultuous ride of writing and editing. And it's such a privilege to help build enthralling stories, ensuring readers are captivated rather than distracted by avoidable editing blips. Her aim is quite simple: to be an author's cheerleader in every editing service by offering encouraging, honest, and insightful input laced with good humor and integrity. So, thank you so much for joining us, Marion. We do
You're welcome. Thank
have,
you for having me.
thank you. We do have the questions that I sent to you beforehand. So
Yeah,
whenever you are ready, we can get started with those and then accept more questions as we go.
yeah, that's fine.
Great. Would you like me to pull them up so that they're on screen?
Totally up to you.
Okay,
Whatever you want to do is fine.
I will go ahead and see that.
Everybody's very quiet. I expected
Yeah,
a little
maybe.
bit more chatter.
Yeah. I wanna say maybe we don't have to. We can all put unmute ourselves and just say the word hi.
Hi, I'm Kai.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be here. This is really cool.
Hi.
No, thank you.
I I picked up my first copy of Colleen Hoover just to see if I could like find any questions. And I'm just gonna sit on my hands while we answer these ones so we can get started naturally.
That's fine.
Great. And yeah, we have the questions, and the questions can be useful. maybe Morgan will begin with sharing the screen just for the first question or two so that people can see what type of questions we're going to answer. But then after the second question, let's unshare so that we can see people's faces. And you guys made the effort of coming at such a uncomfortable time for many of you. For many of you, it's late evening.
Sorry.
So no, just
I'm so
great.
sorry about that.
Good, it's good. I'm just
No,
saying
thank
that
you.
I wanna give you precedent over the people who sent the questions in advance. So everyone here in the group, make sure that you feel comfortable to share and to voice and to have a conversation with Marion. And yeah, you don't have to stay muted. Okay, everyone? Thank you so much. Morgan, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Well, it looks like since our group is so small today, we can actually get started with people's questions here. If you had maybe a favorite one that people sent out ahead of time, we can start with that.
I'm totally in your hands. So you just direct it and I'll just hopefully answer things. Hopefully.
Okay, let's get started with Roya's. She asked, what is your favorite and least favorite part of working in publishing?
I had to think about that one because I guess in my head, I'm not really working in publishing. In my mind, I'm simply editing books. The authors then go off and do all the rest of the bits and bobs that they have to do to publish the book, whereas I'm never part of that. So I guess that's part of my answer. The other half of the equation is when I see authors doing so well, or books in the top 10 of the New York Times, or just getting loads of reviews on Amazon that are so positive. I am just thrilled. Like it's an amazing experience to be part of other people's success. And I think there's just nothing like that. So on occasion, I'll go and look at past reviews of books or reviews of one that's just been released, for example. And if I see all these 4.5, even 3.5, 4 stars reviews, I like to have a little bit of a look and see what they loved, but also what they struggled with, because that I think helps me guide the author. Okay, this is what your readers are responding to, that kind of thing. So I guess in a roundabout way, I love seeing the authors that I work with have success, but not all of them are going to be, the high listers and the ones that are getting massive amounts of reviews on Amazon. So I think it's just helping them launch something that they're passionate about into the world. And often when I'm returning a document to an author, I tend to say, here is your baby back to you, because that's how personal it is to the author, is that it's their work, it's their baby, it's their child. So I think for me, it really is just being alongside them in that journey and seeing them have success is probably the best part. Was there a secondary worst part of that? Was that part of the question as well?
Oh yeah, you did great. I think everyone who goes into editing hopes to see those authors succeed and see what people loved, and then knowing that not everyone's going to make it big like that is a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 10 spots in the top 10. So not everyone is going to get there, and that's okay. And that may not be the goal of every author as well. Sometimes it's just to write and just to get things out there. And so you've got to applaud every journey, every part of it as well, and just encourage them. And if they get reader feedback that's negative, for example, I want to hear about it so I can say, well, how do we address that? Or did I agree with that sentiment? So good or bad, it's just nice being part of the journey. So
Well, wonderful. Thank you. And I think there's one more question we can take from the list before moving on to everyone's questions here. Destiny asked, when you first started out, how did you figure out how long each project would take? So you could figure out how many projects you could handle in a year without overburdening yourself.
That's a really good question, because I don't think when I first started, I didn't really know that it was going to become my career. I was just in my head helping authors. I really had no clue what I was doing, to be honest with you. So I think it just took me a while to see how long I would read a book for, or how long it took me to write an editorial.
I think your mic might have gone
Yeah, we
out.
lost audio on you, Marion.
Audio.
Uh,
Okay, now
Oh, you're back now.
it's
I'm
better.
back. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
When you
Um,
started back, if you can take us 2 sentences back.
Oh gosh. Let me think about that for a second. What was 2 sentences ago? I think initially I rushed everything, thinking I had to take every bit of every document that was coming to me, and I was only setting myself up for 3 or 4 days for each edit, which is ridiculous. Particularly when you see that a lot of publishing houses might take 6 weeks, for example, for a full developmental read and an editorial letter. So then I started stretching it out, thinking I was always running behind. I was letting people down. So I thought, no, forget about the money you can make and just work out how can you contribute the best that you can. And so that's when I started setting up a week for each edit. And sometimes in my diary, in my calendar, I might put 10 days for that edit in my calendar, knowing that if it comes in at a shorter book, then I've probably got a little bit of wiggle room to start the next book earlier, or take a little bit longer if I could see that the next one coming in, for example, was just a novella, or it was going to be 70,000 words rather than the predicted 150,000 words, for example, which is what's coming up next week. So, which is actually really nice. So I think it just took time to work out how long does it take me to read? How long do I want to stay at my desk each day? Then the editorial letter I worked out normally takes me about 2 to 3 hours, but that's often with notes that I've written down fairly fastidiously in my notebook. So I guess it was just trial and error, trying to work out how long it takes. I'm not someone who does an hourly rate because I don't really believe that you can do an hourly rate, because everyone does read at different paces. So it was just trial and error. And I guess you need to break down how much do you want to earn per month? How much do you want to earn per year? And so for me, that wasn't a priority at all, because I'm very fortunate that we're in a situation where I really didn't have to work to pay our bills, kind of thing. So that was such a blessing for me. So there wasn't that pressure. So therefore I came in very, very low on my rates when I first started, because I just wanted to build up, I guess, contact with authors, familiarity with authors. I just wanted them to know what I did. So I really pitched very low in terms of prices. But again, just know that I wasn't thinking this is going to be a career. So therefore I wasn't aiming for the highest price. So I think it's just work out your reading speed, work out how much you want to give to each type of editing role you might have. So whether it be copy editing or line editing or development editing, if you need a lot of time to process the story as you're reading or after you've read it, then give yourself 10 days or 2 weeks if that's what you need. But I think work out what you want to earn per month, per week, and per year, so that you then have that chance to go, all right, well, I need to have 2 development edits in a month, or I need to have 3, or I need to have, like I do 2 reads for all my development edits, for example. So generally I give each author about 4 weeks between each read, so that they've got time and I have time to book other authors in those slots after them. But if they want a quicker read time, then that's fine. I book it a little bit differently. So yeah, does that help? Like, as I said, it does vary depending on how fast you read, what your author expectations are. But I would absolutely and firmly communicate to your author that you're not rushing. So if they ask for a rushed turnaround, if they want it within your time frame that you think is reasonable, then you say that's fine, but I do charge a rush fee. And that might go, oh, I don't want to pay a rush fee, depending on what it is. But you have to set those boundaries. Otherwise, they will say, I want it back tomorrow. It's like, well, you won't get it back tomorrow. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for going so in depth into that. That is like golden.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. So let's open up questions to everyone else here, please. I don't know if we can raise our hands on Zoom, but speak up or use the chat if you're not able to. Yes. Hi.
Hi. I've been writing these frantically, so I'm gonna struggle to read them back. But one of the first things that I wanted to ask was, what are some of the books that you've edited for that have stuck with you? And can you give us a hint as to what you're working on right now? I'm so curious. You said that you were working on something and I want all of the sneak peeks.
You want all the sneak peeks?
Yes.
To be honest with you, I can literally finish a book that I'm working on and have no clue what the title is, have no clue what the character names are, and I'm
Oh my
writing my
gosh.
editorial letter going, "What's the main character's name again?" So yeah, look, but I'm just old, so just forgive me for that one. But I don't think many names, to be honest, stick with me. Obviously, the one that has had the most noise is "It Ends With Us" by Colleen Hoover. And so therefore, because it's had so much noise and name sticks with me. Having said that, though, that was very, very early in my editing journey as well. So I don't really know what I actually contributed, but I know we went through a lot of drafts for that one.
Yeah.
So there's not really many names of books that stick with me. Like someone like Megan Quinn, for example, who is a prolific author. If I could remember one of her names of her books, I'd be doing really well. So because sometimes I have no clue what that book is. So I wouldn't say there's any names that have stuck with me. I think some of my Mia Sheridan books, because she's such an incredible author, the way she writes, the way she explores plot and the way she explores her characters, I love that about her. Jodie Ellen Malpas is another person, her Unlawful Men series. I think some of the best I've ever worked on. And I think mainly because she stretched me so far by having an English man and an American female in the first book, for example. So I was changing vernacular every chapter and changing nuance as well, because they're different characters from different countries. So therefore they speak differently, they think differently. It's not just about the words, it's about how they form sentences as well. But what amazed me with Jodie's books was the beginning. The first book is just outlandish and incredible, and you're going, halfway through, oh my goodness, and you just want to laugh at this anti-hero because he's hilarious, because it's Jodie and she's hilarious. But then you get to the last book, so we're 5 books in, I think, and by that point you're jumping characters and countries like you've got 3 couples so you're jumping vernacular all the way through the books. In the last one, she threw me with an American male and a British female, so I had to keep switching heads a lot. But she had this plot twist at the end that just blew my mind. And I just remember writing in the notes, because we communicate a lot down the side of our manuscript with each other. And I'm just going, oh my goodness, your brain. Like, it was just incredible. So I think that series probably stuck with me the most, because I was so surprised at this enormous plot twist at the end that I just had not seen coming at all. So unless I was just so spaced out, I had no clue. I don't know. Maybe that's not actually a good scene, that I didn't see it coming, but I just didn't. But she does that. So I think Jodie's books often stand out more with me, and I do have another one of hers coming up next month, which I'm very excited about. What am I working on now? I am working on a book by Trisha O'Malley. I don't know if you've heard of Trisha, but she is incredible. She's American. She's married a Scotsman, and her books are based in the Highlands, in Scottish Highlands, and she just has an incredible way of describing themes. So
She's the Mystic Cove. Is she the Mystic Cove series? Like,
she might be. As I said, I don't remember the names of books. What's this one called? This one's called Wild Scottish Charm. So I don't know what the series name is. And sometimes the authors do say, what do you think I should call this series? I'm going, oh, I don't know. But yeah, but she's really funny, and she just captures Scottish personalities so well. And she has all these really cute characters in them, such that, like, normally you've got men in kilts and that's the whole thing that everyone want to look at. But she said that my readers don't even talk about the men. They talk about the ghost coo called Clyde, and they talk about the dogs, and they talk about the ability to talk with their little familiar characters kind of thing. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not surprised. So yeah. So probably that series sticks with me because it's fun and it's unexpected. And obviously, Colleen Hoover, obviously, I think I love the way she writes. My first book with her was Maybe Someday, I think. And that was just an amazing journey of working out. And thankfully, I had a friend who teaches with deaf people. And so it was working out what musical sensations they could hear or feel when deaf, and being able to play the guitar and sing. So, and I have a musical background, so I'm exploring that. So I think I like any books that really stretch me, and that I have to be pushed to think hard about whether something is actually plausible, whether it's going to be enjoyable for the reader, whether it's got really interesting story beats. So it may not necessarily be an author particularly that jumps out at me when I answer this question. So I apologize for my very long-winded answer to this question.
No, I was still hoping for that long-winded answer.
Well, you can get it with me anytime. So apologies in advance. Yeah.
I asked for it.
Good.
I'm going to let somebody else ask a question. Otherwise, I have many piggyback questions.
Well, actually, let's Kai, do grab the mic. Okay.
Okay.
This is why you're here.
Awesome. So I wrote, is romance your favorite preferred genre, before I heard you say that you were a romance enthusiast. And so now I will cut to the question. I guess I wonder the most about editing, how far the first draft comes from the final edit. And I really liked what you said about Here's Your Baby Back. We talked about when I was in the internship with John, that you have to kill your darlings sometimes. Sometimes you have to take something that you really, really love and you have to just cut it. You have to remove it. And I wonder, what do you find in romance that you are cutting the most of? Like how often do you I don't know, is it descriptions? Is it like lengthy dialogue? What is it in romance that you find yourself over and over coming to, like, okay, enough of this, let's cut back to this or this?
Great question.
That is such a good question. It could almost be an author by author answer, because some authors just nail male point of view, for example. So they know that a male answer is not going to be 2 paragraphs long, but it's just going to be something like shit or something else. You know what I mean? So they're not going to have these long-winded answers. It's just one word. So for some authors, I'm often trying to trim back the male point of view and try and make sure that they're not prolific, that they're very short-winded. Although you do have, Jodie's books with This Man, for example, I don't know if you've all read This Man, but Jessie is just a talker. And when we were doing this Anna's version of the books and looking at it from her point of view, I just kept saying, can you shut Jessie up? Because he was just, we were doing Jessie's point of view. And so he was just blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and we're both going, can you shut him up? And she's going, I can't. It's 200,000 words long. I know, shut him up. But we couldn't, because that was Jesse's character. He was just this internal blah, 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 thought, thinker. And so therefore it's just like, all right, we're just rolling with it. So, we'd have to cut scenes because it's just like, you can't have that scene where he's overthinking again. So for her, for example, we might have said, let's just do a flashback and say we saw the scene as a flashback, as opposed to going through all the dialogue and all the, overthinking and the self-flagellation that Jessie was very well known for. So, so you had to, that was for her, it was just like he just talked and talked and talked. Sometimes in sex scenes, I find that I'm counting limbs and going, I think we have 3 hands in that scene, or I think there's an extra body part somewhere. And so I think with sex scenes, you really have to kind of look at them going, okay, that works. How do they get her over the console so quickly? That has never, ever, when they're in the car and they just seem to get them over the console. That I'm always going, this is fiction. It's fiction. They're somehow very elastic and they can just slide over these. I don't know how that. Anyway,
Closer to fantasy.
so yeah, I know, right? I mean, fantasies are different. I love working on fantasy. What is it, romantasy? Because you can have as many limbs as you like. You can have things growing out of all sorts of orifices. So that's actually all fine and good fun. So you've just got to go with that one. So okay, we've got, So I think sometimes it's the male voice that is too prolific. The sex scenes, if there's no dialogue, if it's really, really quiet, sometimes I say, they don't say anything. Should they say anything? But you have to kind of sit back and look at the scene a little bit differently when you're thinking something's not working. So I guess I would have to sit back and think, it's really quiet. There's no voice, no affirmation, or whatever it might be. And sometimes that might suit the characters perfectly. And sometimes you might need a scene that is just silent because it's reverent and it's at the end of the book when they're so engrossed in each other, they don't need the words. So I think there's that element as well. One of my authors writes 145,000 word books all the time. And often what I have to say with her is there is way too much dialogue, because she would have a whole chapter and 10 pages worth of pure dialogue. And I'm just going, I'm bored. Not that I can say that obviously in the document, but I just have to insert places and say, can we have some action here? Or can we see what they're looking at here? Or can we get an internal thought to pause this, or something that puts a bit of a story beat into that scene where it's all dialogue? So I think there's multiple things, Kai, of what I'm looking at when I'm working with romance. There's just so many different elements per the author, because they all have their little ticks and they all have strengths. Sometimes none of them provide any description, and if you don't mind that, then that's fine. But some of the authors I work with, their publishing houses are going, we need more description. And she's going, it's a mountain, Marion. What do I say? Well, I don't know. So I don't care about description sometimes. It doesn't do it for me. But for other readers, they want all that detail. So it's trying to find that balance of, it's not all about me. I'm not the only reader who's going to read this book. And so it sometimes is thinking outside of your own comfort zone, thinking, you might need to stretch this scene a little bit. Readers have been waiting 60% of the book until you get to that sex scene, or until they say, I love you, or whatever it is. So if you only give them 2 pages, they're going to be really disappointed because they've been waiting all this time. So sometimes it might be asking them to stretch a sex scene or stretch the foreplay so that there's more time involved for readers to start getting that, pink cheeked feeling where they're totally engrossed in that scene, that their heart is palpitating as well, or their cheeks are getting pink, or whatever it might be. Because some authors do that so well, don't they? That you're reading a scene and you are there and your cheeks are hot, and I don't know what it is, that some of them just do that so well and some of them don't. So I think it's trying to work out, what are their readers expecting from them, and how do we help them get there?
That is a fantastic answer. That first thing you said gave me chills. I'm not kidding. And that slides perfectly into my next question, which is, what makes a good romance? And can you identify like a manuscript in the first, is there like a certain number of pages, like, the first 10 pages, like, it's going to be a good one, or this is going to need a lot of work, or like, this is really going. So can you identify what makes a good romance, and where and how long it takes to identify a good romance?
Oh my goodness. I think that awesome question, but I think that's going to be a personal choice.
Ooh.
Like, there are some books I read the first chapter of some books going, where is this going? And I don't mind being curious, but then if it's dry, or if it's really wordy, for example, and it goes on for 5,000 words, I'm going, we've got to cut this. So I think partly it's the expectation of the author. For example, a Jodie Ellen Malpass book, for example, I know her books are going to be good. Even if the first draft that I get, I'm going, what are you doing? I don't understand. I know that they're going to get there because she is exceptional. She knows her craft. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to tell a brilliant story. If it's a newer author to me who I don't know, I guess, again, I'm going to be asking her, what do her readers expect? Or if she's already published, I will go and read through the reviews of books that have already come out in her books, especially the 3-star reviews, not the 5 stars, because I want to see what readers are picking up on in this author, what things they're lacking, to see if I actually can do anything in that book or not, with that author. If they're getting all these 5-star reviews, they don't need me. But if they're getting a lot of 3-star reviews, and I think, oh, I can help in that situation, I can talk into that space, then I'll probably take them on. But I think for me, if there is, if I know it's going to be a humorous story, if there is that touch of humor in the first chapter, I'm going, okay, I'm in. If there's a really good chapter hook at the end where they have this great question, or they have like if it's a mystery, for example, like I think my favorite genre, yes, is romance, but I actually love mystery more, especially if there's romance. So give me a mystery where I have to work out who is a villain. That is probably my favorite thing to work on. So I love it if I've got a hint in that first chapter, thinking, okay, this author knows what they're doing because they're just giving me a small hint of this character. And that always helps me know it's going to be good. And so from that point on, I'm looking at how they introduce their characters, how much information they provide in that first chapter. I only want hints. I don't want an explanation of how brown their cat's fur is or anything like that. I don't care. I mean, I do care because I like cats, but I don't care in the first chapter. So I think I'm looking for elements that I like, or what their readers are going to be looking for. If they want short, snappy, concise, no long-winded introductions, no major descriptions, then I think, okay, they know what they're doing. So I guess that's what I am looking for. Sometimes they can go really well in that first 30% or that first, I guess, even quarter of the book, and you think, yeah, this is really good. And then it starts slowing down in the pacing after that. You think, okay, I'm getting bored. So how do we trim things out? How do we inject something into it? So I don't know if that really answers your question, Kai, because it's so subjective.
It makes me wonder if, and forgive me if this is like a young sort of, I don't know, parallel, but it makes me think of a thesis statement. Is a story needing sort of a thesis statement, whether that's an element of intrigue or a question that needs to be answered? Is it like a thesis statement that you're kind of looking for in the first chapter of the book?
Yeah, I think so, true. I mean, absolutely. It's all about writing at the end of the day, isn't it? It's all about, a thesis is really telling a story as well. And so therefore, you need to provide the hook. You need to basically, particularly if it's a Kindle book, you only have a chapter to hook your readers in. They will just go, oh no, click, don't want to finish this. And so I will do anything I can to make sure that the chapter is concise, that what they're getting is what they need, not what they want, to make sure they're communicating. And that can be a lot to do with the experience of the author as well, who don't know. They're wanting to get everything in that first chapter to be a hook, and it's like, you've got to trim it back. Readers are not very patient these days. And so, whereas when you picked up a book that you've gone and spent money on and it's physically in your hands, you're more determined to finish and read that book than if it's on your Kindle and you know you can swipe it off and go to another book. So yeah, so I think you're right. It's that first chapter is really vital.
Thank you. I really would like to get to some other people's questions. Thank you so much for giving me so much time and thought into these answers.
Thank you. Welcome.
So
I'll still be here listening though.
Good. Oh, you've got a cat too.
So I do have a little follow-up question based on Kai's last question, but
Yeah.
can you give some tips or how you go about when you look at a manuscript and you see like, okay, this needs a lot of work. Like where do you start from that?
And how do you communicate it as well to the
Yeah,
Um,
author?
again, this is going to be subjective,
totally.
and it's going to be depending on the author and what they can tolerate. So some authors are very fragile. When they submit something to you, they're literally chewing their nails until they get back to them. So sometimes I might have to message them on Facebook and go, "Hey, it's going really great," and they go, "Ah." So some authors are very fragile, and so when you word things to them, you have to be very careful and very gentle, and then also give specific points, so that they're not floundering through pages worth of documentation from you going, I don't know where to start. And that can also mean that sometimes you can't address every issue that you are seeing as a whole in that book. Sometimes you need to go, what is the author's capacity? Am I literally ghostwriting if I go, what about we do this, blah, 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 and they go, yeah, and they just put it straight in. Sometimes you feel like you're ghostwriting. So you have to decide how much you can address. Is the author going to actually extend themselves beyond or get them to where you want them to be? They may not be able to. So I think sometimes you need to look at the manuscript and go, oh, where do I start? And just focus on one thing. It might be that the characterization is really weak, and so you can't see any character growth. So that you might hone in on that. It might be that you think the story is really interesting, and you can see at 60% that you really want the reader to get to there. And so sometimes I will sit back and think, how do we achieve that? How do we make sure they get to this point? So with an author recently, she had written in third person past tense, my least favorite. And basically she was narrating the whole story from where it started to where it went to, and I was honestly bored. And so I sat back and thought, what would make this interesting? And we got to say chapter 8, I think. I can't even think how many thousand words that was in. And we met this really bright, bubbly, super colored person. I went, this is where we have to start. We have to start with this person, and we have to get to all the other story that she told to get there. We have to get that differently. So start with the bang, start with this bright character. Then let's go back and look at flashbacks or jump time. And so we'll say, here's the future time and here's a year ago, for example, if that's how long has passed. So sometimes it's just a matter of looking at the story and thinking, how would I want to read this? Like, do I want to be told, oh, she went to work today and on the way she had an accident in the car, and then when she got to work she spilled a coffee down her blouse? And no, not when I first start a book, don't care. But what I do care about is this dynamic that she had with this character that we met in chapter 8. I went, we have to start there. So I think it's very gently trying to coax the author to go, consider doing this. Or when I was reading this, I wasn't feeling terribly excited, and I wonder if we did this, if that might work, or be a stronger approach, or make it a stronger reader experience, or stuff like that. I very rarely say you have to do blah, 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 because I'm not an author. I'm not the final authority on her book. She has to be the one that decide, or she or he has to decide how they want to tell the story. So all of my phrasing is a lot about, not quite sure that's communicating what you're wanting to get to here, or this is how I'm perceiving this character. Is this how you want readers to perceive her? So if I think it's a dull and boring character, I will say gently, she's not, I'm not finding her very excitable, or I always want to say she's almost Kristen Stewart-ish, but I won't say that. But you know what I mean? Like you said, there's characters that jump out at you and you think, oh, I love this character. And there's characters that are really dull and think, oh my goodness. So I will often ask questions if I think it's not going well, I'll often ask questions going, where did you want it to land when we got to this point? This is my perception. I'm not seeing that this character is going to be very likable. I'm not sure we can redeem this male character, for example, because he is really basically an asshole. So, so it's like asking questions of your author will help you identify if it's really weak, for example, and how you send it back to them. You might be sending back lots of questions going, not quite sure this is going to land. What are you expecting from this scene? What do you think about starting at a different chapter? I wasn't particularly grabbed by the end of chapter 3. Can we have a different hook? So if we want to get to that point by chapter 10, what if we introduce that character right back in chapter 1, so that we have that chapter, so that person hovering in the background thinking, oh, I wonder why they're relevant. So does that make sense in terms of, I know it's not very specific because it's very hard to be subjective when you're sending something back that's not very good, but you need to decide why it's not strong, what could be done to improve it. Has the author got the capacity to write it to the level that you really would love to read it at? If they don't, target something that you think you can make really strong, whether it be the plot, whether it be the character, whether it be secondary characters. Sometimes the secondary characters, if you give them a little bit more airtime, that can actually make a book really more fun, for example, or more mysterious. If there's this mysterious character, you're thinking, oh, like you sit up and read that character going, oh, who are they? Why are they relevant? So I think it's choosing, like parenting, really, it's choosing your battles. Is this a major battle? Is this a major thing I can fix? If it's not, sometimes you have to send it back going, I'm not really quite sure it's ready for me. Sometimes it might need to go to a different editor before it gets to me who, so for example, I do have someone I will say that to, where her books are not very strong. I'm actually amazed that she publishes, to be honest with you. But I did introduce another editor into her lineup who is really good at getting rid of all the crap, or the, if I say crap, it's terrible, getting rid of the miscellaneous or the unnecessary. She's really good at targeting, making sure that something's sharp and getting rid of irrelevant things. So I often say, send it to her first, get her to have a look at it, and that will help her build, I think, to a stronger level. So sometimes it is just about working at it. So is there another step before it comes to me? Would that, it depends. If you're doing development editing, obviously I'm speaking from that perspective, that we're trying to look at how do we get the story to be fabulous. And so it can be just another step involved, or do you have another beta reader, or do you have a sensitivity reader, or do you have, or I know of someone who can do, you know, that kind of read for you. What if we send it to her first and see if that can strengthen a few points, and go with it like that?
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. I think those are really great insights of just how to be sensitive and thoughtful while addressing, like, okay, it's not there yet, but here's some points of how to get there. And I think asking all those questions that you told me about, like, are really, really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And then I think Yasmin is next.
Hi, Marion. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, thank you.
I heard you mention earlier that you love a good mystery book along with a bit of romance in it. Has there ever been an author giving you a manuscript that has either left you with a twist at the end or on the edge of your seat?
Yes. That's the short answer to that one. Bear in mind, I have read a lot of books. So I think, I guess I go back to Jodi Ellen Malpass probably, because she's the one that has written more of the mystery or the bad boy elements. Just trying to think if I have worked on very many. Mia Sheridan's are like that. So, and hers do often leave me on the edge of my seat because she's married to a policeman, and so there's a lot of crime, well, in her books, that you're digging through this psycho sometimes, thinking, sometimes when you see, like, actually there was an Alessandro Torre book I think it was Moonshot. So there you go, Morgan, or whoever asked me about remembering the name of books. I actually remembered one. So in that book, she had points of view in the villain's, sorry, she had chapters in the villain's point of view, and they were short. They were only about maybe 500 words, but they're enough to give you chills. And so
Wow.
you sat there going, oh wow, oh my goodness. The important thing of that, of course, is that they don't reveal the plot. They don't reveal what they're going to do. But when you know that they're there, you are sitting on the edge of your seat. And sometimes I have actually suggested that in other books, probably borrowing from what Alessandra did, is saying that we're missing some element. Can we introduce the villain and just have a little tiny snippet in his point of view, just to give the reader that kind of palpitating heart experience of, oh gosh, there is someone there that we need to worry about, and you don't know where they're coming. And so I think that's what I like is when, like, Mia Sheridan does it well, obviously, because she taps into the criminal mind via her husband, and I tap into his mind a lot too, going, oh, I need your help, Kevin. I'm working on this book. Is this feasible? So he's just fabulous. So that's definitely one of my resources when I'm working on a dark romance or a mystery. Is like, Kevin, can you help me? So if you know any policemen, it's really good to actually tap into them when you're working on mysteries and things, because they probably have more experience, we hope, than you do. Yeah. So I've forgotten what the question was now. Did I actually answer it?
You answered both of them perfectly, and that kind of gives me inspiration to do for my villain character that I'm working on, is to give just a smidget, but not too much. So thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, you're welcome.
I think I'm next. Hi, Marion. I'm Stacy, and I
Thank
was
you.
reading a post from a previous intern. She has her own website that she was talking about a term called romantasy, which is a portmanteau of romance and fantasy, and that it's become this whole kind of female-driven kind of a genre. And I was wondering if you have any experience with that, or how would you deal with working on those fantasy elements that if that's something that you've worked with before.
I have. I've done quite a few books in romantasy, actually, and I really enjoy it because you can do anything you want. So there's very few rules. And some authors are really good at playing outside of the rules, and they are fun to work with. So as I was saying earlier, I'm not quite sure if you're here at the time, Stacey, we were talking about sex scenes and how sometimes I'm literally counting hands going, I think there's an extra hand there that shouldn't be there. And, but with romantasy, you can have as many extra limbs that you like. So that's kind of the fun element in a sex scene particularly. But I think you also get to flex a little bit more with your character development too, because they can be way more complex. You're not necessarily bound by the human mind. So that's actually really fun to flex with that and to play with that and stretch it. And particularly if you've got, say, for example, a wolf pack, like the book I'm working on at the moment. Actually, I can't tell you that because that readers won't find out till the middle of the book. But there's a book I'm working on that has the main character is a wolf, but you don't know until middle of the book. So you've got to drop all these tiny, tiny hints, because that's what I was asking the author. Do you want them to know that he is this at this point, or when do you want them to know by? So that's actually a really good thing in romantasy is what are you playing with? Like, is it that they're a shifter, or is it that they're a witch, or whatever it is that you're playing with? How soon do you want the readers to know that character is that, or is it just the expectation and bang straight out the gate? That's what you find out. So, so I guess it just depends. It depends what you're asking me in terms of what I would do in development or editing. Is just we just explore what they want. What are their readers expecting? How far can you go? There's really no boundaries, depending again on the readership and how you set up your expectations of the series. or of the book. So I thoroughly enjoy them, to be honest. They're good
there's
fun.
a lot of world building going on and those kind of things that
Yes.
let you be more creative in some ways than a regular romance. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that is one of the strongest skill that a romantasy author needs is world building. So some of my authors, I would say, don't touch it with a beanpole because they can't, that my favorite author who hates describing scenes and mountains and things, just going, oh, we literally go, it's a mountain, yay. Right. Whereas other authors are very, very good at description, so they can easily dive into romantasy because they're very good at world building. And they have to have a very good, skill at the overarching story, because there is so much that's not provided in the first few chapters in romantasy that you need to be able to learn when to drop the hints and learn when to add elements to the story, as opposed to info dumping, for example, and telling them all about the habitat they're living in. No one wants that straight up. You need to gently add those bits, or the different characters that often romantasy stories have. With the world building, there could be clans, and you need to understand the relevance of the clans. You need to understand that there's multiple clans across the country, for example, in one series I worked on, but you're not going to give that all at once. So I think at romantasy, they have to know the big picture, and they have to be able to really easily just divulge elements rather at slow pacing sometimes, as opposed to drawing this big picture in the first chapter.
Okay, thank you. Very good. I think Tori has a question. She would be next, and then we can go with Shirley. Right. Thank you.
I do. Thank you so much, Stacy. I wanted to ask, do you have any advice on marketing yourself as an editor at different stages in your career? Like for example, where has most of your business come from at the different stages for you?
Thank you, Tori. I started very unconventionally. So I didn't set out to become an editor. I was literally just helping a few authors. When Morgan read my bio at the beginning, it literally was from Zooming with authors when I was in this book club that was online. So I'm obviously in Sydney, Australia, and they're all over the different parts of America. So trying to work out a time that actually worked well for all of us was really quite tricky. But we connected with authors, and then sometimes I would then just chat with them afterwards, and not even expecting to work with them, but then we just became friends, and they would go, I was thinking about what do I have to do with this book, and we might sort of just emerged into working for them. So, but after that, it was very much word of mouth. So at the beginning of my journey, Rain Miller told me to build a website, so I did. And then she said, you will have people coming to you asking for work. And being Australian, I thought, oh yeah, whatever, which is a very Australian attitude. But also going to conferences, meeting with authors personally, that was definitely how I connected. I started working with Christina Lauren simply because I was having lunch with Colleen, and we were just chatting. We were actually figuring out my SIM card, I think.
It's two people writing together, right? Christina Lauren?
Yes. So two, and they happened to be working in a series where they had an Australian character in the book that was coming up. And so I said to Colleen, I said, I've never met them. I really want to go and meet them. And I'm an introvert, so there's no way I'm going to go up and meet them. Unlike John, who comes up to me at book weekends and going, hi, can I come and sit with you? And I'm like, it's a bit scary. So it was like connections of just meeting with authors that way was definitely what I had. At the last book bonanza, I would take little bags with some Australian chocolate in it, like Tim Tams and Cadbury chocolate, and my business card, and I had pens made that had making manuscripts on them. So I just gave them out to a couple of authors saying, hey, I love your work. And obviously read their work. If you're going to say that, don't just say you love their work. You have to know who they are and what you like about their work and things like that. And so be genuine, obviously. So that's how I got a lot of business, is word of mouth. Alessandra Torre has, I think she had me on her website and also connected to Incas Con. She's actually someone, Incas Con, I should say it your way, would be a really good thing to go to. It's a conference in the States where she gets authors and editors together. So that would be a really good way to be connected in that community as well, is going to conferences where there are panels, editing panels. And that's what the RT used to have, which is where I first went to, as opposed to Book Bonanza. So I think that's a good way to connect with authors that way. Obviously, I'm talking about the very personal one-to-one connecting, which is how I've done things. I've actually never advertised, and I've just never had to. Everything sort of has kind of come to me word of mouth, which is just such a blessing. So I know I'm very fortunate, and I think if I've ever got a flat spell, I might reach out to one of my authors going, hey, look, I've got some spaces coming up. Do you know of anyone that's looking for someone? Because authors talk to each other. And I don't mean this in a crude way, but sometimes you need to tap into that because they talk to each other. So if you work really well with them and they pick up that someone is looking for someone, they're going to recommend you if you do a good job and if that's what they need. So so for me, it has been word of mouth. Obviously, having my website has been good. I do get a lot of inquiries through my website. Now I just tend to be looking out for other editors rather, who are needing people, and send them along. There's also a Facebook group that has editors in it that I'm part of. I think I can, if I'm Facebook friends with you, I can invite you into that group if that's what you're wanting, because what they will often do is say, hey, I've had this inquiry for a 100,000 word book. It's on this genre. I don't work in that genre. Does anyone want to do that? If you do, DM me. And so that people have often got a lot of work through that as well. But I think, and I'm also part of a few editing teams that I create. And editing teams means that if I need to find a copy or a line editor for someone, I know exactly who I'm going to send them to because I have confidence in Jenny's work, for example. But because I'm throwing all this work at her, I also need to find extra copy and line editors. So if I was going to do that, I would go to the Facebook group, or I would go to, there's an Australian site that I've just found this week because I'm training someone at the moment. And I said, look, go and ask them about the rates and go and ask them about marketing, because for me, I've been very fortunate, very blessed in that way. So I know that's really a very, again, long-winded answer, so I do apologize, but I just haven't had to market myself. I did ask one of the editors, Australian editor, and she said to go to be on things like Instagram and Facebook, not promoting yourself, but commenting on authors' posts. So celebrating the wins, she said, and that's probably a very Australian thing too, is to celebrate the wins of others.
And that's what you've done in some ways, Marion. That's what you've done in some ways. Not only but that's what got you started, in my opinion, no?
Definitely. Oh, absolutely. Because I wasn't looking for work. Like I wasn't, you wouldn't often see me post anything about myself on Facebook. I try and avoid doing it. Looks like I've frozen. Have I frozen, or is it still going?
No, we're here with you.
Okay.
We hear you.
All right. So if I'm commenting on a post on Facebook, it's mostly on an author release or an author I love. For example, I will hook in and just praise that release. Or if I love the book, if I received an advanced reader copy, I'll obviously put a review up on Facebook as well. I'm not on Instagram simply because I don't have time to do any of that kind of thing. I'm
restarting your video. I'm restarting. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying that you're not on Instagram because you don't have time to do that type of thing?
Yeah, look, I actually do have an Instagram account. I wouldn't really know, but when I am on there, I'm just not one of those doom scrollers. It's just not my thing. I don't have time. I have 4 adult children. I run a music band as well on Sundays, and so life is just full. We have people here all the time for dinner, and like I'm frequently cooking for 10, 15 people, so I don't have time to sit on my phone and scroll. And so I don't even get onto Facebook very often, to be honest with you. I just don't. It's not my priority. But one of the editors did say to me that she finds that connecting with people by Instagram for her, like celebrating other people's wins, releases that come out, giving them a high five or putting a review on there. She said that's a really good way to connect with authors because they see that who you are and how you perceive things. And again, that is how I started. I started by doing reviews, and authors would read my review and go, oh, wow, you actually see a little bit more than I had seen in my characters. Rain Miller was the one that said that to me. She said, you keep seeing things I don't even see. And Jodie's often the same. So, and that's this life experience. It's not a skill that I picked up through any courses. It's just life. So yeah. Does that help the answer? Sorry, Stacey. No, hang on. Yeah, Tori. I think Tori answered that one.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a wonderful advice. I know that the publishing world is quite small, so definitely, even though it's not like marketing, nurturing those relationships is super important. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I really do think it's word of mouth, I think, because I know that if I read a book and I think the editing was brilliant, I'll read, like contact those editors and go, are you taking any more people? Because I want to be able to send someone confidently. Like if I have an author request my services and I'm not available, I will look at those books and have written down their contact, and I would have looked at their website and have it in my diary so that I can pull it out and say, try this person. I think they do an exceptional job. It could be that they're a good team. If she's got 7 or 8 editors, I'm going, it's a bit of a worry. But if I can see she's used 3 or 4 people, then that team obviously does a good job. Depending on what you're looking at too. And it could be just that the author is really, really good as well. But invariably, the editing team, if there's a solid group that stay within every book, I will go and look them up and I will stalk them. And I will connect with them to find out if they want other work. And then, obviously celebrate when they do well.
That's been so useful. Let's take 1 or 2 last questions and then wrap it up. Shirley?
Yes, thank you, John. Hi, Marion. I hope you're having a good weekend.
I am. Thank you.
That's great. I joined the last time you did a talk with us, and
Yes, I remember your name.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. I didn't know I was going to be able to come here today, so I didn't prep questions in advance. But I had caught the FOMO bug, so I just had to listen in real quick. But I did have a piggyback question to one of the things you said earlier, because you did say that you do research on authors before picking them up, or you would tell them, I don't think the manuscript is ready for me yet. Maybe there's the developmental stage in between that they need to go through first. Has there been a moment when you actually had to reject outright because of actually like an intrinsic value difference, like the way they think you just can't agree with? Have you been able to not have to, or have you been able to avoid that, and because you've done your research so thoroughly beforehand, so not to, so that you don't have to be in that situation? Or has that happened, and have you been in that situation where you've already picked it up and you have to say that you just don't agree with the material or how they think, or how does that happen, or what do you do?
Yeah, such a good question. I mean, there's multiple steps in that question, but let's see how I can go with that. I guess there are some genres that I wouldn't work on. Pardon me. I was approached to work on a YA book that was around, but like really young YA recently, and I thought it's just not what I work in anymore. So I had to send them on to someone else. If I don't think I've ever been caught out. I think that's what you're asking is, have I ever opened up the book and gone, oh, crap? And I don't think I've ever been caught out like that, because I have looked at what they write and I have thought, I don't think I'm the best fit for you. And that's when I have gone to my editing group and said, hey, this is what they're writing. This is the genre. This is the description. Does anyone want that? Do they want to pick it up? So I think I haven't really been caught out.
Caught out. Gotcha. Is that a publishing term, or is that just a term in general that I'm just not aware of?
Really?
Caught out.
Caught out.
So I
Like,
haven't. That's it, right?
yeah, I think
Probably
you
do.
have.
I just don't know it. That's all.
Oh, I just haven't been surprised. I haven't been.
Sure.
I don't know how else to say it. I guess I haven't been in a situation where I've thought I can't work on this book. The other thing is that if I have said yes, and if I've had a look at the sample, so if I've read I always ask for a sample before I work for someone. And if I read the sample and I think I am not the right person for that, then I will communicate that to the author and say, this is not really my jam. So I wouldn't be the best person to give you the best input. You need someone who reads this regularly, and I don't. That's a nice way to get out of working on something is say, oh, look, I don't actually read a lot of that anymore, but I can find someone who does. But if they have booked with you and you have done due diligence, you have gone a sample through them, you can't turn around and say, I'm not working on this book, because they have booked your time. They have often paid a deposit for you to work on the book. And you just have to step back and just do your job. They can't go and find, if they have a release schedule set up, they can't just go and find another editor within a day's notice. So you have to, I would say, cop it. That's an Aussie term. You would just have to wear that and go, right, okay, I'm working on this. You may hate the content. And so if they ever ask you again to work on a book, you just say, look, I don't think we're quite the right fit. I was actually dropped by an author who didn't feel that I worked very well with her anti-heroes. So she had these really nasty, unredeemable male characters that I struggled with because I just couldn't see that a reader would relate to them. And so she actually said, look, I don't think you're the right fit for me because you're really struggling. She felt I was pushing back too much against her character. So and that was, I loved working on them, but they kind of made me feel a bit creepy, like, as well. So but if you have committed, they've paid money for you to work on that document and you haven't done your due diligence and you haven't checked out the books that they've written so far, that the reviews that have come in, if you haven't done a sample read where you've had a good idea of how they're going to write, if it's someone that's swearing and you hate swearing, for example, then don't work on the book. But don't make that decision when you open the document for the first time and go, oh no, I'm stuck. Don't get in that position. So do your research, be very respectful and say, look, I'm really sorry, I just don't think I'm the right fit for you. I don't have the strengths that I feel that you need. So it's all about them. It's not about you rejecting them. It's all about that you don't feel you have the skill or the history of working in that genre. Yeah. Does that answer that question, Shirley?
Either do your due diligence, or step out of your comfort zone and just do the thing. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So you could have answered that.
That was SparkNote. I SparkNoted your little speech.
Okay, thank you. See, I need you all the time. I need you to trim me down.
That was a great question, Shirley. Last but not least, Jason.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see all of you again. I was an intern here exactly last year. Yes, it's been a long time. I just like to ask you, Marion, do you have any specific advice for professionals who want to venture or commit to a career shift into writing, editing, and publishing because that's what I'm doing. I want to move to historical fiction, historical nonfiction, and travel writing. And I'm taking courses right now.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Well done, Jason. Gosh, John probably has more, or Morgan have probably more advice than I would have. But I think when you're working with when you're working with fiction particularly, it's very easy to follow authors that you like. Sorry, are you wanting to be a writer as opposed to an editor?
More of editing, then eventually move into writing.
Okay,
But
because I think
primarily,
that's what John did. Yeah, that's right, John. You were working more with editing and now merging into writing. So he's probably the one you should ask more than me. I guess you've probably picked up that I've talked a lot about connecting with people. And I think it's as much as AI editing, and I know, thank goodness we haven't touched on that one because that's just like a big issue at the moment. I think as long as people still want to talk to people and get people input for something that people are going to read, that's very wordy, then we are needed. So the more you read and research what it takes, what people put out in the genre that you want to work in and the scope that you want to work in, it's all about research. It's all about looking at what is written, how it's written, subscribing to, if it's nonfiction and it's a travel blog or something like that, subscribe to it and see what the content is like. It's a lot about researching. I'm currently working with someone who is wanting to work with romance as a developmental editor. She is a librarian. She's been a teacher for, gazillion years. She has what it takes because she understands books. So what I'm trying to do is get her to connect with authors, to go to some author events, for example. She's Australian, so I've said go down to the one in Melbourne, or there's one in Sydney, or go to those sort of events so you can connect with people, particularly if they have panels that you can go and attend, because you can get a lot of information out of those panels if you're listening for the information that you need. I guess I keep going back to the fact connecting. So Instagram, follow the people that you want to work with, follow different authors who are going in the same lane that you're wanting to head. Follow them, see what sort of marketing they do, because you'll notice if you're on Facebook, for example, or on Amazon, you'll notice that some authors like Lucy Score, she has a lot of ads now on Amazon. So you might be, or sponsored by, for example. So a lot of the authors I'm working with, I'm noticing to get more clickbait and to get more people just looking at them, they're marketing the hell out of Amazon. They're trying to get publishing deals with people like Bloom or Hachette, and getting into stores obviously will help their sales. That will help particularly if they want to get on the lists like New York Times bestselling list. That helps with promotion. But I think it's connecting. It's looking up where you want to go and following and reading and watching, looking at how they market themselves. It's studying courses like you've already done in writing and in editing. But I think to me, it's choosing your lane. So I'm not a proofreader, for example. I would be absolutely hopeless because that would mean I'd have to be really good at English, and I'm so not. So a lot of what I bring to my books is that doesn't sound right. So I don't know why the actual reason is, but it just doesn't sound right. So that's why I would never say I would proofread. So if you work out what your skill set is, where you want to go, and then study and connect and research to get there is probably my best tip. And I hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marion. Marion, and thank you, Jason, for the question. Marion, you mentioned AI, and Andy had a question about just AI. I'm curious if I can ask for Andy, like, what's your attitude towards AI right now? Do you use AI? Would love to hear.
Are you asking Andy or asking me?
I'm asking you, Marion.
That's a shame. I was hoping Andy could answer this one.
And if you can
So-
restart your camera, I can
Okay.
help you in that, or you can.
You have to do that because I have no clue.
Perfect. Just one sec. Try now. Yay.
Okay.
Well done. Yeah, so your attitude to AI.
All right. How do I answer this question? I actually asked a few people what their thoughts on AI were when Alessandra Torre, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, has started working with an AI editing platform. And basically that meant that I stopped working for her because she was taking all the AI information and going, there you go, my editing is done. I shouldn't actually name names because I don't mean this critically in any way, so please don't hear it as a criticism. But what you can get is the technical parts of editing that someone personally could provide, or in my case, probably can't provide. So AI will pick up your story beats and the word count, and when there's highs and lows in the story, it'll just give you a graph and show you, oh, at 10% you hit that story beat, at 20% you hit that one. And if that's how you write and that's what you need input from, great. But they're not going to give you a little sense of humor. Or they're not going to give you those little one-off human comments that you might suggest. They're not going to hear, I don't think, humor as well as a person would hear it, or they can't feel the tension if it's a mystery, for example. They can't feel the reader's response. And I think an developmental editor particularly offers a reader experience. So AI generated or AI specific editing programs can certainly give an author the technical data on their books, but it may not give them a reader response. And so therefore, authors might use beta readers, for example, to give them the human response, but they may not then have the skill set to say, actually, that really dragged and I'm not quite sure why. Didn't really like that character, but they won't give them anything more specific on how do I develop that character so you do like them. So I think for me, authors are better off having the human element in their editing. They might use both. That's great if they want to. But I do think that they need that human element in responses. In terms of what I use, I have Perfectit, which is, I can link to, what's it called? Chicago Manual of Style. But honestly, I will run a book through that, but it really, I think, only gets maybe 20%, if that, of the errors that I'm then catching. I tried Grammarly, and that just slowed me down and I hated it. And I also found that it wasn't really catching everything anyway. So if you lean heavily on an AI editing tool or even a writing tool, I think you're just going to lose some of that human element. That being said, you also need to have the right editing set up to catch all those errors as well. So one editor is never going to catch everything. So it's important to have several editors in line. So a copy editor, a line editor, a proofreader or two. And if they do, and I know this is a segue from that question, so sorry about this, Andy, but this is a real passion of mine, is to make sure that authors have editing teams. And that means that you then create for them a style guide, and that style guide will have things like, how do they do em dashes? How do they use italics? Do they use that for internal thought? How do they do their text messaging? How do they present things on the pages so that every editor does the same thing for the author? So if you have one editor using Merriam-Webster dictionary and one using the New Oxford Dictionary, you're going to have different things, and that's confusing for the author. Even how to do ellipses, like there's a latest ellipsis is it just goes word ... space word, as opposed to Chicago manual style, which has the space ... space ... So I think if an author wants to use an AI editing tool, great. I know some of mine use Perfect It before it comes to me, but I wouldn't stop there. I think that's my general answer at this point, is I wouldn't stop at that. I would still invest in human eyes, and I do mean that plural. So yeah, so maybe I'm a little bit skewed by my understanding of AI. There are different complexities that I don't understand, whether it generates information for you or whether it just clicks. There are different types of AI editing programs and author and writing programs, obviously. So yeah, so I think I still believe the human element is important, but it's not that you can't do them side by side.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Marion, for answering all these questions. I think you give really thorough feedback. You always have humor, which is always great. And we just really appreciate it. I know that we got a small crowd today, but please know that we really, really appreciate this and
No,
your
you're very
thorough
welcome.
feedback.
Yeah. And I'm going to send the recording to all of our other editors that really wanted to come and send their questions. I appreciate your time, Marion. Thank you,
You're
everyone,
welcome.
thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's such a late hour and on a Friday. I think this has been just such a pleasure for me. Marion, I'm very selfish, and I wonder if I can stay with you for a few minutes at the end.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine. And I'm sorry if you need to do a different time, like if it helps to do a Friday morning, just let me know and I can work it around. But there are some times of the year that I'm not an early morning person, which is why. And at this time of year, I think it's the hardest time to connect in terms of the time difference. But yeah, so if you did want a different time, let me know and I can work on that.
This has been great. I wonder if you guys can unmute yourselves and just bid farewell. And again, thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you
questions.
so much, Marion. Have a good rest of your day.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely incredible.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. I will be taking all of your little tidbits to heart, and I will be keeping them very close.
Oh,
So
you're
thank
welcome, Kai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights, Marion. It was
Thank
very
you so much for your advice, Marion. I appreciate it
informative.
so much.
Looking
That's
forward to
my
the next
pleasure.
one.
Thank you for asking. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
Marion.
Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
Have a
you.
great
You
weekend.
too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Before I have to go, is there anything we can do for you? We really appreciate that you've taken the time to do this for us. Is there anything we can do for you?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't know. It's up to you whether you want to do this again or if it's helpful.